standards, I want a lineup of here are the Indiana academic standards, here are the Common Core standards, where is the overlap, where are the holes. I'm envisioning these committees saying, this one is the better standard. When there's a hole, these two line up fine, check mark. These two don't, where's the hole? And I'm picturing these review committees giving their advice on which ones are better and why. I don't want to just hear the Common Core standards, check, check, check these.
Carrie, that's been done. That part that you're talking about was done in 2010. It was already finished.
And so these review committees, though, then are, I mean...
So bring up an example.
It was actually done, so if you're talking about the comparison from the former Indiana academic to the Common Core, that was done in 2009 by the department. I will say that our direction has been to only review the Common Core standards as well as some Indiana academic indicators. So that has been the direction.
Show an example of grade 2. Because that's the confusion. Because the part you're wanting was already finished. Like, it was already done.
So we actually have what I've termed solitary indicators. And if you look at, and I'll get to a table and the print is a little small, but
there you go.
If you look here, these are the Common Core standards, which are Indiana's current standards. And in parentheses underneath each of those are any of the Indiana academic standards from the past that are connected to these. The ones at the very bottom, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. At least it was just one of these in terms of a red dot. But the ones at the bottom are actually indicators that do not align to the Common Core at that grade level. Now, many of those indicators actually do align to Common Core at a different grade level, and that's part of what the committees are reviewing. Also, it could be because it is on ISTEP, so we want to be transparent. And in some of my previous slides, it shows that. But so here's an example of 4th grade math. I do have 2nd grade examples up here as well. Here's a 6th grade English. Here's 2nd grade math. And again, what we needed to do because of HEA 1427 that requires us to administer ISTEP in 1415, we needed to build in an opportunity to learn for students who are currently 2nd graders to make sure that they actually are exposed to content that would be on the assessment. So we did, and I'll try not to point this at Brad, so we did do, again, an alignment here to show here's where the old Indiana academic standards that we are going to sunset testing next year in 14-15. Here's how they connect to the Common Core in grade 2. And any, at the very bottom, which I won't point to with the red, but at the very bottom are, like you'll see, I think there are 5 right here. So in 2nd grade, if you're teaching 2nd grade, Sarah, for 2nd grade math, there are 5 skills or pieces of content that you would actually teach students this year that you would not have taught if you were only teaching Common Core. And the next one is ELA, so very similar. Again, connecting what we could be assessing on ISTEP in 14-15 for these students when they're in 3rd grade, and then showing any that are in addition.
So everything we're teaching is being evaluated. So the old and the new, everything is being evaluated by what we're already teaching, because it encompasses both. So the I guess that's what I refer to it, Carrie, as that crosswalk piece. It was done.
But I guess when I envision us, we have to make this decision of Common Core, Indiana standards, what are we going to pick? I'm wanting these, they're putting it, again, this panel of people, all of these committees are putting in their time, which I appreciate. And we're always asking people to help. I want them to bring us the advice, I guess, that best advises us. And what I'm needing is, okay, here are the holes. This is what we feel like is missing from the Indiana standards. This is what we feel is missing from the Common Core. So which one is better, or where are we missing things so that we can...
I think, yeah, an important clarification point is that Indiana standards are the Common Core.
Yeah, we understand.
The IAS are not Indiana standards anymore.
I understand that. If
Just
I
to be
could,
clear.
Yes, Brad.
in the interest of the board having input, if I heard you earlier and you'd still be agreeable, I know we're outside of the shared governance number of days for a resolution. I'd like to work with the SBOE staff
yes.
to resolve it. We talked, I think we had a lot of
Sure.
commonalities about what we were seeing on some of these things, but if I could work with them, then we could bring something back and put this on the agenda for next.
Actually,
meeting.
standards review is on every agenda.
Okay.
It's on every agenda from now on till, because we also said we're doing monthly updates with you. So a process that's going to make sure that
And
that
I do
goes.
appreciate that, what you're showing us. I have a little
Sure.
different view of evaluation versus alignment, so I'm going to yield to
Sure.
Sarah, because I know she
All
wants to
right.
talk.
So Sarah, great to
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share my concerns.
Save the best for last, right?
You know, I'll take that. The House Enrolled Act 1427 provided the Common Core standards adopted by the board prior to May 15, 2013 were to remain in effect, while also prohibiting the board from taking any further actions to implement as standards for the state or direct the department to implement any Common Core standards developed by the Common Core Standards Initiative until the state board conducts a comprehensive evaluation of the Common Core standards after May 15th of 2013. In August of 2010, the board voted unanimously to adopt the Common Core standards following their review and recommendation by the Indiana Education Roundtable. Following the board's action in 2010, the Indiana Department of Education provided an implementation timeline to schools and recommended that schools use Common Core standards for both kindergarten and first grade during the 2012-13 school year, in order to be consistent throughout students' education and to expand to second grade in the 2013-14 school year. Following the passage of House Enrolled Act 1427 in 2013, the department modified its guidance regarding implementation of Common Core to recommend 2013-14 school year, second grade students should be taught both the Indiana Academic Standards as well as the Common Core standards, rather than the standards under which students had been receiving instruction, which had been Common Core only. In late September of 2013, the department published a guidance document listing the Common Core and Indiana academic standards to be used as instructional and assessment priorities. The department's change in guidance to educators has contributed to confusion in schools regarding which standards should be taught. Moreover, the changed guidance imposes difficulties on second grade students and teachers by requiring second grade students to learn Indiana standards as well as Common Core standards when those students had previously only received instruction pursuant to Common Core. Because Indiana previously planned to participate in PARCC in 14-15, Indiana does not currently have sufficient test items for a 14-15 ISTEP, administrations, and new test items must be ordered. The department did not have to change guidance regarding second grade, in my opinion, in order for those students to have an aligned assessment in 14 and 15 when they reach third grade and are required to participate in state assessments. Starting with the July of 2013 board meeting, the board has requested that the revised guidance to schools be placed on the agenda, but it has not been placed on the agenda. I feel strongly that guidance to educators and families of Indiana students should comply with the law, be clear and consistent, and should minimize any hardships placed on students and educators. Therefore, I believe the department's guidance should be corrected. Respectfully and welcoming board discussion, I would propose the following. I would like to make a motion that the board requires the department to issue corrected guidance to schools no later than Monday, November 25th, 2013. The corrected guidance must be approved in advance by the board's director and must be distributed by department via DOE Dialogue, the Learning Connection, and any other means of typical communication between the department and the schools. And finally, the guidance must be resent by the department through at least one subsequent DOE dialogue in early December 2013 to ensure that schools receive the updated guidance and can take action at their schools in a timely manner.
What would that updated guidance be?
My opinion is that there was no need to change the initial implementation timeline based on the way that 1427 is written, and I would welcome Michelle to come up and, if possible, at your discretion.
I am totally in agreement that the guidance didn't need to be issued.
Right.
But as you can see on the chart, and Michelle can speak to this,
Yeah,
there
we have
are
a legal
several
standard, an opportunity to learn legal standard.
There are several indicators in second grade that those second graders, when they're third graders, are going to be on their test.
And I would argue that opportunity to learn would better indicate that introducing Indiana academic standards back in is more of a failure on our part. These students in this cohort at this point have only been taught through Common Core, And it seems like opportunity to learn is more difficult to achieve at this point by reintroducing something that they are being introducing something for the first time in second grade.
Well, let Michelle address that, because
Sure.
it has
Those are
nothing
good
to do
questions.
with Common Core or the it has everything to do with the assessment. So I'll let you speak to that,
Sure.
Michelle.
So I think, what we're saying is that we're not adding all of the second grade Indiana academic indicators back in. We've put them on here so teachers can see what the connections were between, or are, I should say, between Indiana's original Indiana academic standards and Indiana's Common Core standards, as trying to be transparent to the teacher to say, here are the alignment pieces, these are the connections. But in order for students to be held accountable for something on a high-stakes assessment in 2014-15 as third graders, we have an obligation to make sure that as second graders, we've exposed them to that content known as opportunity to learn, which is a legal standard. So the 5 indicators, and I pulled up math as an example, so there are just 5 indicators that we've listed at the bottom to say, if students don't have an opportunity to learn about those 5, then we haven't given them access to the content for which we are going to hold them accountable on a high-stakes assessment that is, again, used for teacher evaluation as well as student school progress measuring. And so what we needed to do was to say to the school or to teachers, here is the content that you wouldn't have been teaching this year, but that we need to make sure is on your radar, so that your students, if they already know those skills, great. Just like you would now, you differentiate instruction based on need. But if they haven't been exposed, then we have to make sure they are, because we won't be able to have just a Common Core test, for example, in 14-15, because we don't have blueprints for those. We haven't been in item development. It's a long process, and so we have to figure out what does the assessment journey look like. What do we need to do to transition to new assessments? As you mentioned, we were going to be in Park, so now we're working on what is our backup plan since we aren't in Park.
But isn't it accurate that there aren't test questions available at this point? So we're creating them at this point, or contracting to
No,
create them at this point?
we have enough test questions to build a form.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
No,
Is it possible
we're
to
ready.
have- Michelle had prepared for us. Is it possible to just have her give us some guidance also on?
Well, let me, I just, this is an instructional dilemma, because if the board directs me to send something out like that, I can't in good conscience endorse that, because I would be telling teachers to not teach these 5 skills here when they're going to be tested on it as third graders. In good conscience, I have to be sure that our students are exposed to those for the exam, and we have all of the questions, but we have things ready to go. So there's no issue with that. The department is responsible for sending out guidance, as it always has been before me, sending out guidance on implementation of any kinds of standards. And yes, we were presented with a dilemma with 1427. And yes, second grade could have been given the guidance to go ahead and do Common Core. This was a lot of dialogue at our department, and we had, but it wasn't around whether we had the right to go, and second graders and second grade teachers would teach just Common Core. It ended up being here. Had items in which they had to be exposed to before they took an exam in third grade. So we have the test items developed, and I just think there's been some misunderstanding about that. I've checked the department. I go out a lot. I talk with educators. I'm not hearing confusion now. There was at the beginning, because hey, it's new and what am I doing? But when I talk with superintendents around the state of Indiana, they indicate to me, yes, Glenda, we are going to teach these because they're going to be assessed on them. They understand that. We're in a mode of teaching to the test, pure and simple. I wish we weren't, Sarah. I so wish we weren't, because then we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We'd be moving on with our standards. But unfortunately, it is totally tied to an assessment. So this board could direct me to do that, but I would have to, in good conscience, also say in the DOE dialogue, it is not my personal professional opinion that you do it. So it's about assessments, which is sad. That's what it's about.
I guess I struggle with, I don't feel like it's due diligence opportunity to learn when we're introducing for the first time
Oh.
in second grade. And it's a messy situation anyway, just
It
given where we're at with 1427 and the standards
And
review.
you and I have had good conversation about that. There's nothing good about it.
But I think there's still a high level of frustration and concern within the second grade teachers in the comments that have come to me.
Well, if I can help work with that, I'd be more than willing to do that. Michelle,
I think a couple, the other Michelle, the two other
Yeah,
Michelle.
I was going to say, Michelle McGowan, we've seen your brief, we've heard it, you know, in the essence of time, I mean, truly, we've gone through this a lot. If you want to bring a motion forward, I have said you can, and if you guys want to pass that, you may. I'm just letting you know, in good conscience, I can't do that. I mean, I just
want to
can't
make
do
a
it.
couple clarifying points, and I don't know if you want to speak too well,
Yeah,
but.
I have
Right.
commitments.
Just to be really clear, we're not adding any standards to the content expectations. They are indicators, which, if you're not familiar, indicators are the knowledge and skills that actually demonstrate a standard such as reading, comprehension, or whatever. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. The other thing that we did a very strong review of, and maybe you're aware of this, Sarah, is that we made sure that students would be okay with their opportunity to learn, having exposure in second grade, not having had any IAS in K or 1. Because that was a concern that we had right away, that our content staff in our Office of Assessment and Curriculum said, okay, the first thing we need to do is go back and figure out if these students are going to have deficiencies because they didn't have exposure to Indiana academic standards as kindergartners or first graders. And we did not find that to be the case. So we did, again, just put the second grade pieces on the diagram.
It just feels like it was a premature decision, not knowing where we're going with.
I know.
Common Core.
There wasn't anything comfortable about it, but, you know, there just wasn't.
Well, in terms of my motion, I will defer to the will of the board. I still feel strongly that more guidance needs to be issued. I feel strongly that 1427, the way it was written and the intent of the law was that we continue with Common Core until told otherwise, since that was the existing timeline. However, I will defer to the will of the board in terms of how we proceed.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You're in the field. Both of these things are on the standards. I'm wondering if we could table and bring back up on the 13th. I've asked about being able to bring back a
And I'll
resolution
glad to
online.
work with you about more guidance that might need to go out.
Can we do that? Because I want to be clear too, before we adjourn this meeting, that the things that we're talking about bringing back, that we intend, if we so desire as a board, we can take action on it. And I want to be clear, including procedures. I'm still concerned about that. I haven't forgotten you, Dave.
I have a plane to catch.
I have. Because it's been very hard to get items on the agenda. I know you've got it on there. I've asked for it too, and I'm asking while we're here together in a public setting, can we just be sure that we bring this back up next month on both items?
It's on the agenda every time. It's been on there every time.
It's under discussion, and that's what throws me off. And I don't know when it's under discussion if we can actually act, and I want to be able to act on some of these things.
I understand what you want. So,
Question.
So is that amenable to you, Sarah?
As long as it's available for action at the 13th meeting. I still feel very strongly about it. It feels like there needs to be more conversation. And in the essence of time, I will respect everyone else's obligations as well. But I personally still feel that there is a need for the motion. If the board needs more time to consider it, then I would rather it move to the 13th.
Well, hopefully we can talk in the meantime, because I'm not sure what that guidance would be.
Well, I'm going to second the motion unless I have a commitment that I hear that it's going to be an action item on the 13th. Is it going to be an action item on the 13th or not? That's what you're asking for, right?
Can we make it?
Oh, I've already indicated to both of them they can have action on this, even on this agenda.
Okay, I thought you said it was for discussion or
No.
consent.
Wait,
Okay, so it's
no.
for action? Okay.
I already indicated to both of them.
I heard you say that it would be discussion and you would consider whether to put it as. Okay, so it'll be an action item?
We said, we both committed we're going to work together before we even,
I think the
have it.
confusion is over how the struggle to get items on the agenda, and I apologize for that, but that's the
on
fallout of the
board meeting
communication flow.
procedures, and Claire, I'm going to defer to you. I I'm sure everybody has comments about what they would like to change on the board operations. And maybe those need to come to us in some kind of written format, and then we can continue to have our dialogue and work with that. It's 4 o'clock. I am needing to leave, and I'm not going to adjourn until we're finished. Also, SBOE staff updates, I'm hoping those can wait until the 13th as well.
Can I just clarify? We had a discussion earlier about moving meeting procedures to discussion, and then did I just hear you say it will be an action item on the 13th?
It's on the consent agenda currently, and that's where it will remain for now.
Well, that's unacceptable because according to our meeting procedures...
I understand you feel that way.
No, it's not my feeling. It's the meeting procedures that say a board member may put an agenda item on.
Except the board procedures were developed in an entirely different way. So that's the conflict right now, and I'll have conversation with the governor's office.
But it's still not settled that, I'm not talking about the new model. I'm talking about the existing model says that any board member may put an agenda item on the agenda.
I understand, David.
And what you're saying is you're not willing to follow the
It's on the
procedures
consent
that
agenda
are
right
currently
now.
adopted. I asked to have it put on as an action item, and you keep saying consent item. I'm seeking action in a resolution for next Wednesday. And I need to hear from my colleagues. Either we're going to follow the procedures or we're not. If we're not following them, just give me...
Is the board willing, in the essence of time in this meeting, because we've had this dialogue already, is the board willing to give written comments about the procedures and operating procedures to me so that I know what you want, and we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting? Because I really have an event that I've already delayed in an hour.
I just offered to David that the consent agenda is an action item.
So we can take action.
We vote on the consent agenda.
So I can present a resolution and take action?
Well, a consent
We vote
agenda
on the
is
consent
approved.
agenda.
It's approved in advance, but it doesn't allow room for discussion at the meeting. That's what I was looking for, to get input from board members. And I don't think there's time enough to have an agreement prior to our next meeting.
Madam Chair, can I just...
Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Can I just, is it possible to expedite the agreement so that there are new rules in place that we all know?
That's what I'm wanting to do. I want to work with the governor's office to get something done to be on the consent agenda on November 13th. We've exchanged...
I think what we're all looking for is just clarity.
I know.
And I just want to clarify that it was a request that David Freitas had made, and he asked board staff, to draft some language, and then in the spirit of open, transparent collaboration, sat down with Craig last week to share that with him, but that does not mean that it should not be an action item which the board member has properly requested per the meeting procedures. And so I want to just clarify that I did not say this should be in a consent agenda item. I'm not a board member. David Freitas is. We are governed by the meeting procedures that this board adopted in May, and there needs to be some discussion, which we teed up at the last meeting. The two areas of concern were the 10-day advance for an action item, and then the second is just to clarify roles and responsibilities since the board has its own staff. And right now the meeting procedures, for example, say that Laura Naughton, the administrator, should do the minutes, but we agreed with the department staff that Ann would do the minutes. So those are spelled out in the procedures right now, and it's important to clarify since those are the procedures by which we're governed.
And I think both offices are working through that. So if you've got clarifying pieces that you would like to see, please let us know, because we're working through that process as we speak. And I made it very clear that it's on the consent agenda already for November 13th. So could I have a motion to adjourn? A second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.